All right, everybody. Here we are, Business Roundtable Podcast with returning guest Bil Hatch. Welcome back, Bil.
Thank you. Glad to be back.
Yeah. So I thought we were talking right before we were recording. I thought Bil has been on us from the podcast almost from the beginning in 2023 when we launched this podcast. And I thought, you know what? Leadership in business development is not done in a day. It is done it's built daily. And
Right.
I thought it would be fun to bring Bil on and just ask some questions for both of us about how do you stay powerfully engaged, driving mastery, being motivated, whether you're leading yourself or a team, running the business, striving for personal growth. I know you're writing a book, Bil. And just how do we stay focused, inspired, and effective every day? So I'm glad to have you back, Bil. Welcome back.
I'm very glad to be back.
Yeah.
It's been a couple of weeks.
Yeah, we've had some
I
other
was
guests come
jonesing.
in, so we're like, okay, we got to get Bill back and see where you're at. And I like to have returning guests on the podcast. So, just briefly, Bill, give us a quick background for those of you that have maybe missed previous episodes. Your background as a business owner, and just share a little bit with the audience.
Well, wow. I've been my own business owner off and on for like the past, let's see, what decade is this?
We're in 2025.
We're 2025 now, so it's been over 30 years since I started this trail of tears. But off and on. I've tried a few different projects to turn them into regular businesses, and I've had some businesses that I've kind of taken personal ownership in. I've actually been working for someone else, but I treated it as though it was my own business.
You were an
Took it that
entrepreneur.
seriously. Yes, I was an
Absolutely.
entrepreneur, and taking responsibility for things, and actually that's propelled me forward in a couple different areas, because one of those businesses was I was in auto sales, and that's a very difficult business to be in.
We've talked about that in past episodes, so go back and listen to the past episodes. But you're a creative because you do your own podcast. You're working on a book, So how?
And I'm going to school at the same time too.
And going to school, right?
So there's a lot going on, and and I do need to stay motivated.
Absolutely. Right. I want to talk a little bit about that.
It's difficult to keep on track, to stay focused, and stay motivated. I've got my up playlist, and all those kinds of things. I've got a list of jobs that I need to do every day, on a piece of paper that's on my wall in front of me. So I can look at it, and anytime I lose focus, okay, is this one of these 7 jobs? Because these are the essentials of my life. And so I can look at it and get back on track.
So you hit a couple things I wanted to touch base on already. The power of kind of these daily, you just kind of mentioned daily habits that you're creating, and how we have to be as consistent as we can be to make those impactful and occasionally those big moves. You mentioned having that list there. I would say that's helping you with clarity, right? Being clear on what's the most important thing that we should be focusing on, right? And does that? So when you get up, Bil, and like you're looking at that list, so you have, kind of energetically, or what's the tone, or what's the theme for the day, if you will, right? Like, hey, where am I going to be today? What's the focus?
Well, I try to get the energy up. That's for sure. And I try to and that energy and focus are my biggest problems. Being of the ADD generation,
I
Focus
think all of us at some
is
point
the daily
nowadays.
yeah, no kidding.
Right?
But um, actually, I have something to say on that, but maybe not for
Yeah.
tonight.
Yeah, we'll come back to that because we get a whole
Yeah.
episode on
But
ADD, neurodivergence, all of that stuff. But yeah.
yep. But yeah, clarity isn't so much a problem once I get
Mm-hmm.
it done.
Yep.
Because you should always start your projects with clarity on what it is, what you need to
Mm-hmm.
do, and what your finish line is for it.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever that finish line is, if that's retirement
Right.
or an actual project finish.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to prematurely put up the sign that says mission accomplished.
Yeah.
So yeah, clarity. Begin with the end in mind.
Yeah, we've talked about that
clarity.
too. Yeah.
Yep. Clarity is definitely an important one, but it's not so much a daily thing for me.
Okay.
Because I'm clear on what it is that I'm doing.
You
It's
know
just
that it's more
right.
reflect. Yeah, you already have that. I use a full focus planner. I've talked about that before. I'm kind of looking at what's my daily big three, my schedule. I think for me, part of the building this daily habit is reflection. And sometimes I do it at the beginning of the day. I also do at the end of the day. Like, what am I going to be preparing for tomorrow, as well, to help me keep focused, right, and be on the most important things.
Right. Yeah, and play it like you're playing chess. Be several steps ahead. That's become something that I've been hearing a lot lately with the way the president is doing things. In that it's like in some cases it feels like he's playing chess because he's so many steps ahead, and so play chess, not checkers. Know what tomorrow needs to bring, what you plan to bring tomorrow. Have your backup plan. Maybe have that several days, weeks, months out. Maybe not every day for months, but knowing that, okay, in 3 months on this project, I have to do this, and everything else leads up to that. And in some ways, knowing what you're going to do in 3 months will actually help you plan the next 3 months, because you know where you need to be, and then you can work backwards on, okay, this is a little less done, this is a little less done than that, and so on and so forth, until you get back, okay, this is where I am now. I've got a track laid out for my plan, and the train's going to get moving.
Well, I think the planning. So I think there's two things you just talked about. There's long-term planning, which is that, like you said, forecasting, and you need both long-term and short-term. So if you need both. So I think what you're saying is, I look at what I call the impossible game. I do these fact maps. I guide people through this in my coaching of like looking at the year out, bringing it down to the month, to the week, to the day. To me, all of those are connected. And if you don't have that, it can really be hard to develop proper habits that get you where you want to go and do those daily activities that you need to in order to make the move.
I've for long-term planning, I've always admired the Japanese model, which is generally multi-generational. And when you're talking about long-term planning, you're talking about 100 years in the future. So, we don't. Most Americans, it's like 3 months is long-term, and it's not long-term.
No, that's just that's a way of planning, but I think looking at it different ways sure can keep you motivated, because what is building these habits of like, why am I doing things like exercising or eating the food I am, because I don't see really much change in a given day,
right?
But I will see it, in the months and the years to come, and certainly our generations will see things if we do it well. How we raise our children, how do we build our businesses, right? And so we stay focused on developing those habits that really serve us, and
Well, I've been working really hard on my weight recently, and I've lost about 20 or so pounds. And but I see nearly the same face in the mirror every day. So I don't know that I don't realize that there's a difference. And this is true of micro improvements. You know, if you've earned $1 more than you did yesterday, the bank account's not blown up,
right?
You know, from yesterday. But I talk to people about when it comes to saving emergency funds and all. It's like, well, don't do it big. You know, put in $10 a week, put in $100 a month, whatever it is that, whatever small amount you can afford to do to put towards that emergency fund. And you won't even realize in 6 months when you have your emergency fund built.
You just kept adding to it.
Well, that be right.
That goes to the question about, okay, we talked a little bit about daily habits. We definitely go more. We're doing a fast and furious episode tonight for you guys who are listening. We normally do long form, but I thought we would just do a fun, quick, engaging podcast about daily habits, but then staying motivated. Like you're just talking about motivation, staying motivated even when it's challenging. Like, okay, right. Because you're being very purposeful in like, I need to have an emergency fund. I need to be there. That's my mission, or my this mission that I'm on, right, is to get that fund there. Okay, well, sometimes things come up, I get distracted, but just keep doing that so you don't avoid burnout. What happens if people go to the gym, right? We're in the beginning of January. Usually the gyms are packed the first week,
right?
And everyone's like, I'm going to do all the hard weights. I'm going to run a marathon. I'm like, you're burning yourself out, and then you quit. Right? It's like it's a burn, a quick burn. How many times we see that versus like what you just said, Bill? Don't burn out. Take a small step and build on that step. Right?
Yeah. It's like the old saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Right. You know,
don't try to swallow the whole elephant all at once.
Yeah.
It's not going to work.
Right.
That's why Quitter's Day is like the second Friday of January or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, and why I brought you, one of the reasons I brought you back on, Bill, is because you're consistent. You're making progress. You're moving forward. Now, all of us can go at different speeds, but here's a concept for me that blew my mind years ago from one of my mentors, Garrett J. White. He was talking about running marathons, and he said, this goes for running marathons or riding bikes or whatever you do. There's some people that just burst out and go to the front, and then they burn out. And there's people that do this, they'll zigzag. I mean, they'll run really fast and then they fall back, and then they run really fast. And they try to get there. There's this constant back and forth. And if you really watch professional runners, what's interesting, there's a pack. You ever notice there's like a pack of runners? That, because what they're doing is they're not blowing themselves out at the beginning, and they're not trying to and then or they fall behind, and then you see people that it takes so much more energy after you fall behind to try to catch back up. But if you could just maintain and be consistent, you're much likely going to be able to make it through the entire race, right? Yeah. Bill, that's what I hear you saying.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Trying to go all out doesn't work for more than a couple of days. It really doesn't. That give 110%, kind of attitude, that's going to get you, that's going to burn you out pretty fast. And and it'll frustrate you because you're not going to see, no matter what you do, you're not going to see that much of an improvement. I mean, I've come to realize that speeding from here to like church or something, if I go 10 miles over the speed limit, I'm much more likely to get a speeding ticket, and I'm probably only going to save a few minutes on my total drive time. That few minutes is not worth the risk of the going 20% over the speed limit is not worth the risk of the time you save is not worth the risk of getting a ticket, and it's the same thing in business, because you're not going to see you're not going to see the $10,000 improvement between today and tomorrow by giving 110%. You're going to see, you might see a $500 improvement if you're fortunate, if you're working on just the right project, But yeah, unless you win the lotto, you're not going to get that $10,000 improvement overnight, no matter
No.
what you do. So take a deep breath, pace yourself, and so that you can get that $10,000 improvement. Because if that's the goal, then you need to get to it. And there was something I was thinking of. I usually encourage people to use SMARTer goals, which is specific, measurable, ambitious, but realistic, time-bound, ethical, and reevaluable. And that reevaluable is so important, because you need to be able to go, if you're okay, let's say you do give 110% and you give it for a week. If you haven't planned your goal to be reevaluable, then you are going to stop. You're going to quit, because you can't look at that goal again and reevaluate it and go, okay, what do I need to change to be able to keep making my way toward this?
Right.
So, and if you're giving 80%, you need to be able to do the same thing, because, okay, this isn't happening fast enough. What am I doing wrong? Let's go back and evaluate what I'm doing and how I'm doing the different things.
You're making me think of another book I've got back here called The 12-Week Year. I'm looking at my bookshelf. But the idea is what you're saying, Bill, is like you evaluate the tactics that you're taking. Now, if we're changing tactics every week or two, we're probably not going to get the goal either.
Right.
So it's
that might be a problem.
We're burning out. I just did it really hard for a week. I got to change gears. How many entrepreneurs and even business owners, they'll get the shiny object syndrome, and they're like, if they would have just stayed consistent and just did the work long enough, they would see the result. But they keep shifting every time. Right.
Well, that's why you got to stick with ambitious and realistic in the middle of SMARTer. It should be a stretch for you to do whatever it is you're planning to do, but it should also be realistic. It should be ambitious enough that it's making you work, but it shouldn't be so ambitious that you're trying to leap over a tall building in a single bound. That's just not going to happen. You can make your ambitious goal to break somebody's record, to break your own record. And that's realistic. But yeah, trying to go too far, that violates the realistic part of your SMARTer goal.
So that is really important. In staying motivated. One of the things I use, actually, it's kind of fun. The Full Focus Planner that I have literally in front of me right now. They came out with a new planner this year that I use with some clients called the Wellness Planner. And the other thing it helps you do is how are you taking care of yourself? So you can also look at this, and I use this with my Warrior app too, kind of a foundational understanding of are you taking care of yourself physically, getting the right sleep, moving, connecting, relaxing? Because if you're not doing some of these things, they're off. I use another app called the Warrior app, where I go the Core 4, where I look at how am I showing up in relationships, how am I showing up in learning new things, taking care of myself physically, spiritually. I think when these things are off, that does affect you and how impactful you're going to be in leading yourself in your business and other things. So are you paying attention to those things on a daily basis? Even as much as are you are you drinking enough water? Are you staying hydrated? Are you eating the right foods? Right? Being intentional about those things. Again, all those little things. Sometimes we're like, oh, I can skip a meal, or I can push through this, right? And it doesn't. And then we're wondering why we're so frustrated or just don't have the energy to stay motivated. And then I don't know about you, Bill, but I've unfortunately found in my place where I let that happen, and then I'm not as effective leader because I start to be snippy or not as responsive or caring or understanding to the people around me.
Right.
They don't I don't want to be around you as a leader. You're not leading yourself well. Why would I want to participate? Versus the other side, if we're coming from a healthy, abundant place, right, where we can give and help lift up other people.
Right. Yeah. You have to love yourself before you can love others.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just so important,
Yeah.
because as a leader, your main job is to give.
Yeah.
And so if you're not taking care of yourself, then you certainly can't do that.
Yeah. I know we're just doing a short snippet here today, Bill, but I want to, we've covered daily habits. We've covered some being motivated. You talked about smarter goals, which I like, and I have a different version of that we'll have to come back to because I like what you brought in today. But
Okay.
if I were, I'm just, those are to listen to the podcast today. What would be, your like top 3 things perhaps that you would be doing, leadership practices that you would say, hey, if you could do this tomorrow, here's give them 3, Bill, or I'll add in there, but then they can pick maybe one of those exercises or thoughts or ways of being that they could use to start to increase their effectiveness in leading themselves. What would comes to mind to you?
Well, one which we did talk about already, which I do, is make up a responsibilities list,
Mm-hmm.
if we want to call it that, instead of a jobs list. That sounds a
Mm-hmm.
little more draining. But be clear about what your core responsibilities are,
Mm-hmm.
and put them up somewhere where you can see them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that way, if you feel like you're getting sidetracked, you can just go, okay, is this part of the core responsibilities? Do I need to do it?
Mm-hmm.
If that answer is a no.
Yeah,
Um, and
absolutely.
that's, as a leader, you should definitely know what your core responsibilities are, and be able
Do you,
to
yeah, if
yeah
you're working for somebody else, right, Bill, you should have a
mhm,
role and responsibilities clearly
yeah
identified. And if you don't, then start writing it down and then go to your employer and say, hey, here's what I
mhm,
think this should be. Do you
yeah
agree? You know?
yeah I mean, there's always the other task is required line
Sure.
in everybody's job description, but there really should be a core set of responsibilities,
Absolutely.
and those are what you should be spending 90%, 95% of your time on.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
so yeah, and you can also do one up for that includes your home responsibilities,
Mm-hmm.
as well, the things outside of work.
Yep.
Whether that be some professional organization, your church, your family, is should definitely be in the core responsibilities. Whatever you want to put in it, and that's what you stick to.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not if it doesn't fall into one of those categories, then you need to seriously consider whether it's something you should be working on.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What would be a second one? A second one would be, well, what you mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
self-care.
Yep.
At all different
Look at
levels,
those different
mental,
domains.
physical. hmm
Yeah.
Because
Absolutely.
if you aren't in a place of abundance, I really like that phrasing there, David.
Yeah.
Good job. And if you're not coming from a place of abundance, then you're not going to be able to do your job as a leader,
Yeah.
a leader at your work, a leader in your community, a leader in your home.
Mm-hmm.
Because your first job is to give. And if you're not full, then you can't give.
Mm-hmm.
So self-care, definitely something to do on a daily basis.
Yep.
um I guess the wheel of life wouldn't be a daily thing so much. I think as maybe a weekly task. Let's see, what
Well,
would be
I think I
another
like.
good.
Well, I liked how you said the goal in the smarter goal. So
Mhm,
you meant that, and I mentioned this earlier in the habit of like reflection or reevaluating. Are you
mhm,
practicing? I guess that's what I'm just
mhm.
pulling out of Bill is like, are you practicing that reevaluating? And
Right.
I use a
Yeah.
framework of what should I stop doing, what should I start doing, and what should I sustain doing. I use that as a framework for me.
Okay.
So you're prompting me to think about if am I reevaluating it? Am I reflecting on what I'm
Right.
doing? Because if you've been doing it for a long time, let's say, and it's not getting you where you want to be, maybe then that's a point where maybe I need to adjust that, right? Not,
Right. Or surrender it entirely.
yeah, maybe just lay it down altogether. Say, I just got to stop
Yeah.
this. This is this is, I was talking to Stacy, for example, Skinishita, which we've had on the podcast, and we're talking about how she's trying to do some things in her business, and she's messing around with a lot of things. It's just draining her on the computer and other things. I'm like, it's not worth it. Like, you need to stop doing that. It's not getting you where you really need to be serving your clients, right? We were talking about like how to help each other and focus on that. And by having good people like yourself and my life, Bill, and others, that we can help be a reflection to each other, right? And do you have somebody that helps you to just reflect and say, is that serving you? Is that getting you what you want?
Yeah. And that leads to accountability. The old accountability buddy.
Yeah.
Be able to reevaluate, because if you can't, then you're going to get stuck. I mean, there's a pretty good chance your goal wasn't perfect to begin with.
No. We're wrapping up the episode here. We're excited that you guys came and joined us, for Bill and I coming back again. If you really enjoyed this podcast, we love to have you like and subscribe and follow along. We are on YouTube. We rebroadcast on LinkedIn, so hopefully maybe catching us on LinkedIn. And if you'd like to join us as a guest, please reach out to me. We have a whole Business Roundtable domain podcast we're expanding, and we'd love to have you a part of the journey. So until then, Bill, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and continue to be that intelligent leader, leading your business well, and we'll look forward to having you next time on the Business Roundtable Podcast. Thanks, everybody.